This policy dialogue is as commented on yesterday's academic day time for this forum so that decision makers and researchers may discuss key points on how to manage natural resources in Colombia so that we may support the transition towards peace with legality and including governance of natural resources as a key factor of this discussion. During this time, throughout the morning, we will be examining the ways to improve the legality of the management of natural resources to support peace in Colombia. We'll be adopting a wide view of legality which comprehends the legal framework and the constitutional projections that rule the environment and the social well-being. We will consider the approaches that are being implemented to innovate in Colombia in that field. Everyone should know we have simultaneous interpretation, so we ask you to please look for the interpretation icon at the bottom of your screens and then click on the language of your preference, either English or Spanish. The guiding questions for today's event are as follows. First, in the context of natural resources and peace in Colombia, what does legality and state of rule, a state of law mean in Colombia? How can we protect the environment and communities? What laws, institutions, and practices are working and which need to be reviewed and how? Number three, what are the next steps and priorities to manage Colombian natural resources to support the transition towards peace? Number four, what has been done in Colombia to use the natural capital as an instrument to build peace? What has been achieved and what have we learned and how can we take advantage of the takeaways? To answer these four questions, we have the following agenda. There'll be a panel, an initial panel on lessons, challenges, and solutions for peace building from the perspective of environmental governance from 9 to 10:20 in the morning. This panel will be facilitated by Magistrate of JEP, Gloria Rodriguez, from 10:20 to 10:30. There'll be a 10-minute break. Then we'll have breakout rooms. And for 1 hour from 10:30 to 11:30, we'll be discussing the presentations and the guiding questions. Then we will have time from 11:30 to 12 at noon for some group insights, group reflection on the conclusions of the group out or the breakout room discussions. Finally, there'll be a closing panel from 12 to 1:30 in the afternoon, facilitated and moderated by myself and Carl Burton from ELI. I want to acknowledge and thank especially all the partners that have contributed to put this event together. Environmental Law Institute from the US, ELI, the Global Green Growth Institute, GGGI, the Association for Environmental Peace Building Association, External University, Duke University, UNDP, United Nations Development Program, and the foundation of the Swedish Foundation that financed a project that frames this initiative. It's a judicial training program for Colombia judges on how to manage cases or deal with cases related to deforestation in our country. Okay, no further be said. Next, I'd like to introduce Gloria Rodriguez. She'll be moderating this first panel. Gloria is a magister from JEP, the Special Peace Jurisdiction, and she's part of the team of this project. Gloria Amparo will be facilitating, like I said, the first panel, and Gloria, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Miguel. Warm greetings to all the attendees and participants, all those of you who have joined this important panel. Lessons, challenges, and solutions to build peace in Colombia. It's a very hot topic. It's very relevant to all of us. And of course, it calls us to reflect, how are we going to do this so that policies, management, the tasks we all can do wherever we are, we may build peace in Colombia. It's this wish that we have not only for ourselves but also for future generations. We have a luxury panel today. We have Alberto Gomez, chairperson of the Colombian Network of Botanical Gardens, Oscar Darío Amaya, magistrate of the State Council, and also a very well-known academic person in our country, Daisy Jaramillo, Director of Human Rights and Environment from the General Attorney's Office. Very important work that they're doing there. And then Carolina Jarro, a big friend, and someone also who's very recognized because of their important work at National Natural Parks. So, this is the methodology. Each one of the panelists will have 10 minutes. Please prepare your questions. For the questions you'll have at the end, we will have some QA time with each panelist. Okay, I should say to start, we'll start with Alberto Gomez Mejia. Alberto Gomez has been someone that for a long time has been working to protect the environment and to protect botanical gardens in Colombia. He's an attorney. He studied at Javeriana University. He also received a PhD in juridical sciences. He has led several environmental institutions. For example, Quindío Botanic Garden in 1979, a garden that is worth visiting. They have done very interesting work there to protect the environment. He has also worked as an attorney, and he has worked with different texts, consultancy in the country and at the international level. Even with IUCN, he has done very interesting work. And we need to highlight his work as chairperson of Botanical Gardens in Colombia, where not only is he the chair, but he was the founder, and the recognition that has been given to this. Several foundations in Great Britain have granted him international awards because of his conservation efforts. So we have someone who has great qualities, some work that we must recognize, work that I know that he does this with his soul, and you're gonna be able to see that after his presentation. Welcome, Mr. Gomez. Thank you, Gloria. I want to thank GGGI and all the sponsors of the event, and a warm welcome to all our colleagues. Well, basically, what I intend to show with you, can you please move to the next slide? I want to highlight that Colombia is located here at a site that is very strategic and it's qualified as a hotspot of biological diversity in our planet. Next one, please. The reasons why Colombia has this position is because of its location in the tropical area. And it is part of the Andean region, the Amazon. It has area in the Pacific, in the Caribbean, and of course, all its background and the complex water system, in addition to the climate features. And also, it has relatively recent human presence in this territory. That's why this is a country with such big biodiversity. Next one, please. At the same time that we have such biodiversity, we have or we face big destruction. About 300,000 hectares destroyed, and they're destroying a great deal of the natural areas in Colombia. 300,000 hectares means half a hectare per minute. Next one, please. The main causes of this deforestation are the expansion of the agricultural frontier caused by the inequality of land tenure and land possession, also the activities of illegal crops, better, illegal mining, and the expansion of the urban areas as well. Those may be the main drivers. There may be more, but it's mainly that the common denominator of these causes is economic purpose, seeking economic benefits. Next one, please. And of course, the consequences is the extinction of biological species, of course, wildlife and many more organisms, the degradation of natural ecosystems, climate change that has increased, of course, the alteration of the cycles of water, the loss of the opportunities of using the empowerment of human communities, and many more damages. Plus, the lack of environmental peace in Colombia. That's a big drama. Next one, please. The what causes these issues that we have highlighted, of this paradox between biological richness and misery, or human misery, is the absence of leaders who may have political willingness to preserve, to conserve the insufficient political awareness of the population about their rights, especially the right to choose their development style. I believe it's a key point in this discussion. And the absence, and this is also a big thing, the lack of knowledge and collective ignorance. We Colombians do not know what we have. We ignore completely the biological conditions and the richnesses we have in our country. We are like foreigners living in our own home. This is the condition, or this teaches us that we need more environmental education. Next one, please. This means that the decision or decisions for environmental governance have to be the political decision this, to fight this catastrophe we're living in Colombia. Next one, please. We all human beings have the right to enjoy peace, peace among ourselves and peace with nature. Every type of aggression against nature is an aggression against our own humanity. Next one, please. We believe that political and environmental education leads to knowledge, then knowledge leads to love, love leads to conservation, and conservation will lead to the perpetuation of life. We need to insist on the need that Colombians, we have a right, we have the right, a fundamental right that has not been recognized constitutionally, to a good quality of life, to quality of life. It should be in our constitution. It should be the social aim of the state, but it's just a declaration in paper. As a consequence, I believe this is the challenge we face. That's all I wanted to share with you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Very interesting view about conservation, the chance that the communities, of course, may enjoy those resources that we have and then achieve peace. Very nice. Now we continue with our panelists. We have Oscar Dario Amaya, an attorney, graduate from External Columbia University with a specialization in economic law from that same university, and PhD in environmental law from El Rosario University, and Javeriana University, and External Columbia University. He's been founder and director for 7 years of specialization of environmental law and master's degree in environmental law from that same university. He's been an independent consultant in conservation issues, public utilities, and environmental law. He's been Deputy Minister of Environment, Delegate Prosecutor for Agriculture Issues. He currently performs as an advisor of, of the Council State, of the Consultation Room, and other services. Mr. Amaya, welcome. The floor is yours. Please enlighten us with this knowledge that you have accrued after so many years. Thank you, Gloria. Very kind introduction. I want to thank especially all the institutions that have come together to support this event. I'm very pleased to join you and to be able to tell you a little bit about from the judicial branch how we see this issue of environmental governance. About this point, I agree with the diagnosis from Alberto about the environmental crisis, the value crisis, and all the topics he touched on. Also, the issue of education, the lack of education and lack of leadership, which, of course, there's no doubt, everyone, this all adds for this crisis to increase. Crisis on governance has increased so much, and we have been able to identify it, and then we can approach it from different angles. I like to call our attention to answer the questions that we've been asked and to wonder what is happening with the environmental public sector, specifically with the judicial branch. You know that here in Colombia, we have a national environmental system formed by the Ministry of Environment, some CARs, autonomous regional corporations, the urban environmental authorities as well, and there are some institutions that provide support, very important support in research, Sinchi, Humboldt, and other institutions. Also, the park unit is a wonderful entity that administers parks in Colombia, which they have to face the daily life in this country. Not a country that is ideal, but the act not ideal, but real country. They face the conflict, they live the conflict, and they have to face the conflict as it's been happening for so many years, many times sacrificing humans. And then on the other hand, the judicial machinery, which, like in any country in the world, tries to respond to demands to solve problems and conflicts. We see with a big concern, with worried eyes, how the peace agreement, as perfect or imperfect as it may have been or may become on any opinion, each one may have, they're all very respectful opinions. This peace agreement that we have in Colombia is a constitutional ruling. It's an agreement that includes 6 important chapters, and there are environmental regulations there. I am interested as a professor and as part of the academy that we don't emphasize the judicial aspect, the environmental aspect, I'm sorry, of the agreement, of the peace agreement. Colombian peace agreement is an environmental agreement. It has more than 26 norms on environmental matters, which allows us to say that we are before a roadmap in environmental matters. It's a clear roadmap, even very summarized manner as to what should be environmental management, what should be environmental governance. So the proposal that we've been working on in the past few years from the State Council, where I support them, especially the last 3 chairs of the State Council, Lucia Bermudez, Álvaro Namen, and Marta Nubia Velázquez, the last 3 chairs, and we want to suggest to the country that we can support environmental governance and precisely that. And we want to tell the country that we should create some specialty on agricultural and environmental and specialty within the jurisdiction. It's not a different justice. It's not a different jurisdiction. It's an agricultural and environmental specialty. Our proposal is to train judges and environmental rooms, environmental courts for 4 main reasons. We believe there are 4 main reasons legal foundations, and then we can say that the country should first of all the peace agreement. The peace agreement again, there are 26 norms to say the least, and they touch on environmental concerns. Second, the Escazú agreement, even though it hasn't been approved by the Colombian Parliament, The Escazú Agreement is an environmental agreement. It's regional for Latin America and the Caribbean, kind of built for us, made for us. The third four reasons is that there are two norms in the National Development Plan. Again, the National Development Plan, they talk about the creation of the agricultural courts and then environmental tribunals. So it's not just will, it's something we need to recognize. So I'm mentioning four reasons why we need to talk and we can talk about this specialty in Colombia for agriculture and the environment. How would that be? What would that look like? The idea is to distribute the country into 8 regions, not to create an institutional tsunami, but based on what we already have, what has already been created, divide the country into 8 regions. More than divided, it's the 8 regions that we have in our country concentrate agriculture and environmental judges. One in the Caribbean region, then Urabá in the Pacific, Córdoba, Antioquia, and Chocó. The Pacific, South Pacific, the Andean region, the East, and the Coffee region, Orinoco, and the Amazon. You know what that would mean for environmental governance if we had a court, an environmental and agricultural court in Leticia, and the border there in the corner of Amazon, in these 8 regions, of course, and the legislative frame, and we would need to decide what cities, where we would place those courts. Physically, it would be a court adjoined to the administrative tribunal, following the organization of the state under the organization that we all have. So we could have those courts for small causes, agricultural causes, and environmental concerns, environmental cases, and then some rooms, environmental and agricultural rooms for second instance, and the first session of the State Council and the civil room of the Supreme Court. So we would create 2 more magistrates in the State Council, 2 more rooms for the first session, and the court has said that they don't need to create this new status, just appoint these tasks to the civil and agricultural room. So in summary, what we suggest is that to improve the quality of the decisions made, we can't say that the current justice does not work. Of course it works. But we are suggesting, as it's been done in 41 countries in the world, to gather the environmental reality and climate justice that demands actions, specific actions from the state, and the judicial branch is part of the state. So in summary, our proposal is to recognize the reality, comply with the peace agreement in the environmental matters. We're talking about comprehensive rural reform, the end of conflict, the issue of victims, of course, implementation, verification, the 6 points of the agreement, the 6 chapters. We clearly see 26 norms on environmental protection. That's as far as I go, Gloria, and emphasize the need to strengthen education and training, and in the judicial branch, the specialty on agriculture and environmental matters. It's surprising that up to this moment, the Congress of the Republic has approved and the Chamber of Representatives that create this agriculture and environmental specialty. But we're surprised because we hadn't done it before. We supported that process. We saw how in the commission and then in the plenary, they approved this proposal. It's a bill to create the agricultural specialty. It called my attention how radical they were. Those that defended the bill in favor of those who intended to incorporate the environmental concerns as well. There was another project at the same time, a bill on environmental justice, but it definitely calls our attention. These differences and radical differences that, on the contrary, should be complementary. In Colombia, since we had an institution called INCODA, INCODER, and all the agriculture institutions are directly related to environment. You just have to go to the territory and realize that here in Colombia, are not black and white. There's it's gray. Many things are agricultural and environmental at the same time. Not only agriculture or not only environmental, but the peace agreement, the feasibility of the environment in Colombia has ignored that the environmental matters and agriculture matters can't be separated. Thank you. Thank you. It's an interesting proposal. The need to talk about special justice for the environment, agricultural and environmental. That's what we have heard. It's a strategy to make the peace agreement more feasible, to see what is happening also with this Kasu agreement, and to make reality what the National Development Plan has set out as a goal. Very interesting arguments. Very well. We continue now with the next panelist. Thank you, Mr. Amaya. Now we'll listen to Jaramillo Rivera, who specializes in violations against human rights. She's a professional. She's an attorney and specializes in criminology. Uh, and in the judicial branch, she's been working there for over 30 years. She was a former judge in Pitalito municipality, specialized in public matters. And then since 1992, she joined the General Attorney's Office, where she's been an attorney of the Special Unit Against Terrorism, kidnapping, and extortion. She is a delegate attorney before the the support investigation analysis. For 20 years, she's been the representative of the Attorney's Office, General Attorney's Office, before the Operation Committee for for the surrendering of arms. Okay, welcome. Thank you very much for being here with us, and the floor is yours. Good morning. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I want to thank the attendees for taking the time to listen to these presentations. I want to thank the opportunity from ELI to present this short, brief introduction. You're very kind. The strategy we're trying to develop here in this unit, we have 5 axes, 5 key topics. First, of course, the environment. We have highlighted 35 attorneys in different branches, in 15 branches more or less of the uh, 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 Attorney General. And we want to work on the investigations that have to do with crimes against natural resources and the environment, as stated by the numeral 11 of law 599. If you take a look at it, there are 13 provisions that talk about this type of behavior. For this situation, we need to take into account several things. First, the criminal phenomena of the environment against the environment has to be approached from 3 angles. First, the illegal extraction minerals. Number 2, what relates to deforestation. And number 3, what relates to illegal traffic of wildlife. What have we done at the Attorney General's office? I heard the previous speaker, and as a matter of fact, we do have some common points regarding the strategic corridors of crimes. These crimes against the environment cannot be dealt with independently because there are many stakeholders that come together along these crime corridors. The issue of the environment has to go hand in hand with investigations on finances, investigations on the presence of illegal armed groups in the area, Law 1908, and what calls us to work in an articulate manner, not only within the institution, but also within other institutions. What does that mean? When we talk about the crimes against the environment, we need to think what is behind all that and what can we identify so that we can face that phenomenon and tackle it. We need to understand their finances, and of course the environmental unit needs to be articulated with the finance unit to do work together and then come up with a strategy so that we can tackle this phenomenon. Unless we do this together with all the finance unit and all the units, the phenomenon will appear again, and we're just halfway. So when we go to the field and you face the phenomenon of deforestation, behind that there are two situations: one related to finance, and a different thing related to the armed groups and zone. Again, law 1908 deals with that. These armed stakeholders are behind those crimes, and there is an economic power. That's why investigations, strategic investigations of the general attorney's office, is more than 20 cases. They go hand in hand with the two units so that we can act together. Number one. Now, number two, if you've seen throughout this year, there's been 33 operations, which has led to 94 people that have been placed into custody because the attorney's office works in two senses. First of all, to catch them in the act, and number two, orders passed by the judge to enforce those orders. So when we have an order of arrest, it implies other things. What other situations we need to keep in mind? First of all, the undercover agents. Then we need to intercept communications, because when we are operating in the area, those interceptions may shed light, more light on the case. If you've noticed, in a week, the attorney's office has carried out more than 6 judicial operations. This phenomena is because of the strategy and because the other situations that have to do with communication interception, they take us to the region when we also act in other areas. So as we're saying, we're working in articulation with the police force, the army, the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Defense. We have called several institutions where each one contributes with what they can give us. So you know that the phenomenon of here is something strong. You have to go there with experts. They know the area and they work on it so that you can go to the judge later, and you can get progress, make progress, and actually get the evidence. After law 906, you have to go there with everything. Many of these situations are the result of negotiations or stuff like that. But in other cases, you go to court. If you have the right evidence, the experts, then it's easy. We need to make progress. That's why we need to create this strategy, how we approach the cases. We need to work with our institutions. We need to work with other units within the Attorney General's office, as it's been explained before. And 2024 decree is really important. We have highlighted that because it provides the tools. Now, what do we need to do to learn about the country? We need to go to each region, and then in each region, we can detect phenomena, for example, drug dealing, the presence of illegal armed groups, and the deforestation and the issue of finances. So we can divide into strategic mobility corridors. We have identified 6 of them. Number one is in Cauca, Nariño, Valle del Cauca, Huila, Tolima, Risaldara, Caldas, and Quindío. These are the states or departments of Colombia. Number two, we've called it Magdalena Medio, basins and rivers, because it's a different phenomenon in this region of the country. You cannot say that the issue of wildlife is the same situation that we find in the Caribbean coast or the valleys in the east. It's not the same. It's a different situation, and there are regions, strategic regions, and criminal corridors that are stronger in some areas than others. So if it's stronger in some corridors than others, the strategy needs to match that, and the investigation strategy. Again, the departments in the southwest, the second corridor is basins and rivers, is Atlántico, Magdalena, Guajira, Sucre, San Andrés, Cesar, Bolivar, and Magdalena Media, because in the South Bolivar, it's a very hard situation, very harsh. And also rivers in that area of the country. The third corridor is Norte Santander, Santander, Boyacá, Arauca, Casanare. The fourth one is Antioquia, Medellín, Córdoba, Chocó. And the fifth one is Meta, Guaviare, Caquetá, Amazonas, Bauca, Guinea. Because in the Amazon region, we need to know the region to be able to act appropriately. That'll help us guide the investigations as well as the phenomena that are found there. And we need to keep several situations in mind. Natural parks, they are strong in that part of the country. We need to protect them, and these are emblem zones, and they include our patrimony, our heritage. Number two, rivers. You know how they behave on rivers is different. To investigate here, you need to rely on the Navy to make conduct operations. It has to be strategically. You need to mobilize different people, and also rely on security. Also in the Amazon, there are armed groups present there. A fifth corridor is Bogota and Cundinamarca, because here the situation is much different, especially in the case of wood. So we have found different phenomena throughout the regions of the country. The only way that we can react and protect natural resources is to know the regions, design strategies to match that, and have a specialized attorneys look at their profiles. Make sure you have the specialized experts and rely on the law, especially regarding armed groups, undercover agents, and the interception of telephone lines. So I invite you so that we continue to work hand in hand together with the private institutions, the education institutions, the international bodies, and with other institutions, and then together against these phenomena within the Attorney General's office, and with the support from you, I'm sure we will be able to succeed with the 35 attorneys in the 15 branches I mentioned and the six crime quarters that I mentioned. Thank you very much and success. Thank you for your time. Very kind. Thank you. Very interesting view as to what's happening in the criminal side, the work from the Attorney General's office, the importance of taking into account the diversity of our country, the diversity of the regions, and this needs to be reflected in the type of investigation. Very nice, very nice compliment to know what the Attorney General's office is doing. Now, I need to introduce our dearest friend, Carolina Jarro. She's a biologist from National University of Colombia, specialized in environmental law from El Rosario University. A student of mine. I'm very proud to have been her teacher and master in nature conservation. She has more than 19-year experience in both public and private sector. She's deputy director of management and management of protected areas and the NMP NMP, National Natural Parks. She's been managing that department. She's been head of different departments. For example, the Secretariat of Environment and the Botanical Garden. Carolina has wide experience in managing protected areas, planning department, territory organization, as well as restoration projects and teaching experience. Dear Carolina, welcome. Good morning to you and to everyone. I want to thank you for inviting me. It's been nice to be able to participate. I'll be trying to tell you from NMP National Natural Parks what our context is, how we have made progress within the framework of the agreement and the alternatives that we've been considering and identifying for what it means, all this exercise, all this practice and implementation of the agreement. I'm going to share my presentation. Okay. I'd like to start by telling you, I want to show you a picture of La Macarena Sierra, the mountain chain. This is called Crystal Canyon. In the context of our protected areas in the NNP system, we have worked very hard to face the armed conflict and, of course, the implementation of the peace agreement. I want to start by telling you a little bit about the task at hand for NNP. Right now, we administer a total of 21 million hectares of protected areas. They are distributed in 59 national parks and 3 comprehensive management areas. As we can see in the map, we are present in all the regions in Colombia with more bigger areas. The region where right now we have more protected areas or a bigger area. The biggest area is in the border between the transition between Amazon and Orinoco. In the Colombian Amazon region, this is a big challenge. We are present in 31 departments, 220 municipalities, and if you look at the map, as a matter of fact, we are also present throughout all the rural places of the country. These rural areas have been victims of the armed conflict. If you take a look at the map, if you see the areas with the strongest conflict, we see in areas such as Macarena, we have four parks, the Sumapaz, Cordillera de los Picachos, Timico, and Macarena parks. Four of them. The conflict has always been crude there in all this area of the reservation. Recently, with the last expansion of the Chiribiquete NNP, and the Paramillo, Tai, Catatumbo. She's mentioning different parks, and the Sierra and Santa Marta in the north. Of course, many other parks in Tolima. We've been facing their different situations related to the armed conflict in the country. But an MP system coordinates the protected areas as well. What does that mean? That not only do we administer the single registry of protected areas, which right now allows us to say that we have 1,343 areas, protected areas that cover 31,408,000 hectares. That's about 15.17% of the national territory. And if we look at the land surface and the continental surface, we can also see that regarding a marine or sea platform, we have 16.28%. No, that's for land and 13% for sea areas. It's a key task for us, as it was mentioned before, to protect these territories. Territories that have, as a matter of fact, in their rural areas where the forest rangers are, and for many years the forest rangers have been few of the programs, some of the programs that have remained a territory, and they have had to face the different waves of violence that have taken place because of the conflict. And we lived the peace process, of course, in those territories. And we were able to open new areas for ecotourism and create strengthening processes for investigation. But it has cost the lives of many forest rangers, and we have received impact on our infrastructure and the ecosystems we're trying to protect. These ecosystems are completely important, not only for conservation of the national heritage, but the conservation of the productive base. Here in these ecosystems, we see the production of more than 80% that we consume in our aqueducts in our country. These ecosystems are key, are basic for climate and water regulation, air uh, cleaning, the production of raw materials coming from nature, also in topics such as the provision of food, not just related to the fauna that lives there, but no, also for humans and the rest of the population who get food from there. So we protect the natural and cultural heritage. Many national parks have more than 50%. They overlap with indigenous reservations and collective territories. And we also work, of course, with the peasant communities that are present there. It could be in the area of influence or within the protected areas. There are many benefits, of course, for the country, but we receive a lot of pressure. I want to show some of the images related to this and the process of transformation and change that has taken place there. You can see some pictures there, the Paramillo NNP, where there's been deforestation, also colonization, directed or guided colonization in different natural parks. This colonization many times is directed, it's related to land grabbing, colonization that relates to the armed conflict. It has caused that these areas are occupied by displaced population or vulnerable population. They've been looking for lands where to inhabit and where to conduct their productive activities. This means, of course, the transformation of a great deal of the vegetable coverage of the NP system, even though we understand we have 17 million hectares and we can say that is an ecosystem that is still well preserved. We have critical parks though. And we have zones where, especially in the last few years, there's been an increase of the transformation of coverage. This is linked to the elimination of habitat for wildlife, and it relates to extraction of fine wood. There is criminal presence and illegal mining, for example, at a national natural park in Cali called Farallones. We also have mining in the Amazon, illegal mining in the Amazon, especially river mining to extract related related to gold extraction, and this has all impacted our protected areas. This is a beautiful image of El Tuparro NNP, and it's a big contrast with the big impact we see or related to deforestation and all the issues that have been discussed. Here are the deforestation figures of the last 20 years in our NNP system. This is only deforestation. It means the loss of forest. Nonetheless, there are other ecosystems that have been transformed and destroyed or impacted, and they are not necessarily covered by forests. For example, the highlands. For example, El Tupar NNP was the image that you just saw before. The greatest deforestation rates in the last decade have concentrated in Timigua, Namaquereca, Laparillo, Catatumco, NMP, and Chiribiquete NMP. It was expanded, it was enlarged, and we have lost about 6,000 hectares in this at this NMP. This is a big concern. As you know, the importance of regulating that these parks play in regulating the climate, but especially these parks, there are indigenous communities there. They had not been contacted. They had not had initial contact. So the risk of impacting their territories, contact with these indigenous tribes, and of course, to maybe threaten this population that is important for our country is a big risk. It's a great risk of impacting those indigenous tribes that inhabit those territories. Also, in the last few years, we have been implementing, as it was mentioned before, some actions to be able to control what's happening in the territory. We try to do this in an articulate manner with the country's safety policy and security standards, and together with the National Development Plan and everything that has been said with the Ministry of Defense, the uh, NNP system, we have submitted the necessary reports, but we still have not been able to control everything that's happening in our territory. In this context, and also related to compliance of the provisions of the peace agreement, especially points 1 and 4, towards the new Colombian countryside, especially 1.1 and 1.110, is the closure of the agricultural frontier. We have been implementing actions there to achieve conservation agreements with the population there, with indigenous populations and also with African Colombian citizens. We have been able to make progress in the implementation ever since the peace agreement was signed. 1,344 families have been benefited, of which 644 are in the territories or PDT municipalities, and we sign agreements to try to stop deforestation and also look for alternatives of land use and try to conserve and preserve protected areas. That has not been an easy process. We have had to develop regulation to enable these possibilities. So Articles 8 and 7 of National Development Plan, we could sign agreements with pets and vulnerable population. Agreements do not change the vocation of the protected area. However, it implies the regulation of the territory and planning development, and to create alternatives related to the use of non-wooden products. And we have been developing this provision, this regulation of these products to try to recover areas, to establish payment for environmental services, and to enable ecotourism projects. Also, with the support from national cooperation, we are implementing local sustainable development projects with the help of the EU and the KF project to intervene local communities seeking to find alternatives to contribute to other options to improve the quality of life. Also, the implementation of the guidelines on governance from FAO and reduce conflict in the territory and create instruments and all the regulation, all the norms for our proposal that we need to establish, which is basically the policy for the national natural park system and protected area system for 2030 to reduce the loss of biodiversity and of course to reduce the impact that the loss causes for social and economic development and cultural development of the nation. This policy has a component that is very new. It's compliance with the system that it should be well represented, well managed, and properly conducted, and it has to have equality. We need to recognize all the conservation tasks of the ethnical and rural communities in the territory, and there should also be equality conditions for how they manage it and the implications it has. This is another challenge for the implementation and for all the team of the forest rangers and to manage the protect the system of protected areas in our country. Thank you. Thank you, Carolina. Very interesting view on NNP. We see how they have consolidated the system, what the tasks are, what you are doing to respond to the pressure and the issues you find in in these areas, and especially as how they relate to the conflict, and they have caused the death of forest rangers. They have brought impact to biodiversity, the biodiversity that inhabits there in these areas of the country. And we see how this work has to be jointly with the communities and together with international cooperation, all the institutions, and we are all forest rangers. We're all uh, in favor of conservation, and we all have to do or to chip in to preserve this and MP. Okay, thank you, Carolina. Again, let's go to the questions. I think there are several questions. I have received some questions here. So if you agree, we can start with Oscar Darío. Marcela Velasco asks if you believe then that the environmental agricultural discussion or points of the peace agreement are to be highlighted and should be implemented, and what actions should be carried out according to your discussion. Thank you for the question, Marcela. Yes, the political agenda of our government and the legislative agenda of our government responds to certain priorities, some interests, the development of some political positions. So far, what we've seen at the Congress of the Republic is that the government supported the creation of this agricultural and environmental specialty. But unfortunately, it was not only for environment. In the end, it was only agricultural. So it's kind of lacking a leg. It's the specialty is not enough. It's not strong. It's not strong enough in these areas that Carolina mentioned, or other areas, rural areas of the country. Just we're the head of this agricultural judge. He needs to hear cases on the small matters, small conflicts between neighbors, agricultural concerns, some conflict over borders, some empty lands. That's fine. But it turns out that piece of land, and these are real life cases. We knew about a case of an agricultural court. At the same time, turns out this land has agricultural interests, but on top of that has a wetland because it, there is a wetland, or because it doesn't have water. It could be either case. In the third place, it turns out that in a corner of that piece of land, a small portion of the land, it overlaps with a mining license, a mining title. Again, this is not something I'm making up. It's some real life cases. So in this project of agricultural specialty, he can look at the agricultural matters, of course, but the environmental concern, he's not, let's say, suitable. He would need to refer it to another X and also to manage the consequences or the considerations for the mining license. So this happens in real life. So it's not only agricultural or not only environmental, but it's both. So environmental and agricultural concerns come together. And then Marcela asked, then what government institutions do we have? Well, we have the institutions that do this task is the Land Agency, the Rural Development Agency. There's a special council for peace that has been doing a great job, but we still miss that integration at the jurisdictional level. That's what we miss. What happens today? To in real life, these judges are judges in the case of cases against the state, and the civil judges and civil courts have been sorting these out. But the greatest number of these conflicts is in response to actions of law and popular actions where they have to act. In the case of actions of law, it's very frequent, especially in the last 4 years, I would say, that constitutional judges create this category of nature as a subject of rights, as a way to react quickly from the judicial viewpoint to manage ecosystems, to respond to pollution, and so on, the protection of resources. We need to look at that very carefully and make sure that there is efficiency and we're doing this right. That's not very clear if that's the right way. It's if this is sorting out the problems. This is why Marcela and all other attendees, that's why we insist very respectfully, of course, so that we strengthen institutions, that we strengthen the attorneys, the prosecuting attorneys' offices, that we can strengthen the prosecutor's office, because they do this work, both agriculture and environmental matters. In the last 4 years, especially, we removed the agricultural side of the environment, but in the end, it was returned. So the institution is a lot stronger, and it hears and it sorts out in the field with the agriculture and environmental prosecutors. They are there to sort out those conflicts. And then who would defend that agenda? Well, this is the state of law. This is sorted out by the state. The institutions, the corporations, territorial authorities, the Congress, where we need to bring these discussions, and the judicial branch. They are in charge of sorting this out. Thank you very much. Now we continue with the next question.
Daisy, this is about tasks the general attorney does. So how can they improve efficiency in utilizing those crimes linked to deforestation, handling evidence and evidence, yeah, that so that the work for judges becomes easier. When I told you, I said that the situation is strategic. And if you have a tool, Law 906, to investigate crimes, you need to use those strategic tools that the system provides so that we can get to a situation being successful. So we have to go to preliminary hearings. We need to have go and do actions after registry for any evidence that we have collected, custody chain. So what we have to do in practice, we need to use just as Law 906 presents it. It is very technical so that all procedures go hand in hand, just as Law 906 establishes, authorized by the judge, or after registration, or after capturing a person. So respecting those fundamental rights and having good practices just as law presents it, I'm sure we're going to go ahead and move forward. Let's remember that the law establishes a methodological program. In that methodological program, you have to involve other state entities. You, attorney, cannot go alone. If I'm going to go alone by myself to some a place, I stay in my office. But if I have something a strategy, I go along with all institutions. I go with experts. I so success is based on handling investigation strategies, going with institutions inside the general attorney general's office, and the corporations our experts have, and good procedures so that I can be successful. What is the conclusion? Strategic use. Design the investigation strategy as the law demands. Go with other institutions. Prepare your team. Prepare your experts. Go with knowledge. Get to know crimes in your region. Get to know your area. I'm sure that with those strategies, our investigation is going to be successful, just as we do it by knowing the region, knowing characterization each region has, facing environment. Thank you. Thank you, Daisy. We hope it's like that. Luis Rio. He makes a comment and he asks a question for Carolina. So cost of opportunity. If legal private investments does not get to forest, it would be very complicated to have opportunity cost before illegal forces and opportunity cost of PVM. I don't know what PVM, if Carolina, oh, the non-timber products in the forest versus illegal crops. So what the public sector should do is to generate enabling conditions so that we have this investment in the private sector as part of their effort. So a question for Carolina. Should we have pilots, forest sustainable use, those wood products in tourist with PPPs, private public partnerships? That's Luis's question for Carolina. Yes, about his comment. Yes, that's what the National Development Plan mentions. We need to learn to see forests in a different way. For many years, what we have done is just to log so that we have other productive activities, especially, for example, um, having other types of activities, livestock, for example. But forests are productive. So non-timber parks and seeds, oils, and so on, they have very important markets, not for the pharmaceutical industry, but for many others. So this is something that must be explored so that we can have sustainable use of forests. So forest reserves, integrated districts, recreation areas, other categories where it is possible. And in national parks, it has been, it has been a positive alternative, like artisan chains. Many of our indigenous peoples produce it. We have inside protected areas. We have so many options for indigenous peoples and African descendants communities can have in a value chain. They could make use of that and strengthen not only in production, but in commercialization, even at the international level. We believe that it helps deforestation. We have had pilots and families that have signed agreements have changed agricultural activities or they have reduced them, and then they have started working on producing um, honey with native bees. So along with other activities, they have income that substitute income from, for example, illegal crops, reducing risks and bringing population to legality. We really need to work hard to have other productive chains. There are very important examples, such as the ones in Thailand or other Central American countries. They have made it possible to work with local communities. Thank you, Carolina. Very interesting work that can be done with communities to protect and protect ecosystems. Luis Felipe asks Oscar, is it necessary to review control means, classic ones, to face environmental and agricultural conflicts in the framework of that specialty? And what instruments, process instruments must be created so that we have effective legal actions? Thank you. I think that it is not necessary to make such big shift, even to modify the general process code when we're talking about proof, evidence, when we're talking about, well, these environmental issues. So what we are proposing is just like it has happened in many countries, there is technical support. I would like to tell you that in Chile, environmental courts, there are three courts throughout the whole territory, and they are integrated by 5 magistrates. They're called ministers there. 3 are lawyers and 2 are non-lawyers. They are, for example, civil engineers, but they have the same rank as magistrates. So they can have technical opinion about environmental issues. That is an advantage. In Colombia, that would be very difficult. We would almost have to have a constitutional reform. But the proposal that I told you about at the beginning is that in those 8 regions, in those rooms, those courts, civil courts, and Supreme Court, the idea is to create a technical team, support technical team, not to be auxiliaries. Yeah, not justice auxiliaries that are queried often. No, we want at courts and at the state council and to support courts to create a technical support team, uh, biologist, civil engineer, chemist, those that have a position, permanent position to support decision making. They should not only be there, they need to train judges, they need to teach courses, substantiators, technicals. So to answer Luis's question, first of all, current control means that we have in Colombia are pertinent in relation to environmental issues, and we wouldn't have to modify them. We would have to provide technical support. Decision quality would be better supported. Thank you, Oscar. There is a question for Daisy and Oscar. And this question is for you too about recommendations. Jaime Salazar asks, what recommendations would you provide to implement training programs directed to judicial officials to strengthen label competences in relation to investigation and utilization in environmental issues? Thank you. We need to keep in mind several situations. You know that environment experts are determinant. Experts are key. So you need to have an environmental engineer, forest engineer, civil engineer, geologists, geographers, because they need to know the area and they need to know roads. And they need to know rivers so that they can know where to look and what to look for. You need to strengthen and train experts how to face court, what we are going to face. We need to strengthen them. Second, investigators, they need to be taught the criminal market linked to environmental crimes so that they understand how to search, where to look, and what strategy to apply. They need to know about finance related to armed forces. Investigators need to know where and how to look. They need to understand that we have, I don't know, Caparros, Clan del Golfo, Pelusos, all those armed groups and dissidences. So you need to know how each one of those groups act, perform in those areas so that they know where and how to look. You need to know about gold. You know that gold has a specific connotation that implies moving money, alliances with international organizations. So you need to investigate from where that first person who who gets the gold, who buys to get to the international market. To get to the international market, you need to know where companies are operating, how, who they're buying gold from, what departments have them, how is gold taken out of the country. Investigators need to know where to go and how to investigate. Experts and investigators in terms of environment, and they play a key role. In spite of the specialty, in spite of the fact that specialty is different, they need to go hand in hand like this so that you can move forward. Thank you. Thank you very much. There is this, oh wait, there is this, oh, I'm sorry, Oscar. Yes, you're so right. Yes, your answer is missing. To Jaime's question, there is no doubt. Daisy just mentioned it. It is important to strengthen capacities. Training courses like the ones we are having today are paramount importance. I was a magistrate and then I visited tribunals. Judges told us, I'm sorry, I don't really know about prevention principle. I don't know much and how I can assess emissions, for example, particulate emissions or drainings. So the point is not to make them biologists or chemists, but we do need to train them. We do need to tell these judicial servants how far they can go. Obviously, a lawyer cannot play the role of a chemist, but they need to understand basic aspects, and like Daisy mentioned, experts. Experts need to be trained, and that's why there should be environmental technical teams. Jaime, the answer is ongoing training. Defects, for example, rain, I don't know, in natural parks, water parks. So it's not the same that area as an urban area. So support from a technical team is required. They need to be uh, substantiators, lawyers. They need to be able to make a decision between renewable, not renewable natural resources. All that needs to be explained and taught there to them. Thank you, Mr. Amaya. This question is for Carolina Miguel Rojas Sotelo. If the problem is presence and control in territories to avoid criminal actions, how does the environmental national system works? How does it work? Those that exert territorial control and justice. I suppose that this is directed to protected areas, right, Carolina? Yes, Gloria. Environmental national system works in articulated manner in territories. It is comprised of different instances. It's not only about territorial control as environmental authorities, we are part of CNAT, but productive generation in territories. Legality starts from people in territories having legal activities to develop, that they can actually um, participate in the market. There could be investigation, there could be research. Like Sinchi Institute in Amazon, they are having productive packages, alternatives to use species linked to forests. They can have options for markets and working with environmental authorities and municipalities that are part of SINA. They are environmental authorities in territories, and they need to work hand in hand with different guidelines. The ministry is the controlling body. They have generated alternatives like payment per ecosystem services, Compass actually, and everything that has come from standards or regulations, they have enabled this payment for ecosystem service to those people that are in national parks. For example, I think that this is an exercise everyone needs to have articulation in, so that we just don't get in one way to territories. Something key is to see territories in a comprehensive way. Rural, productive, environmental, they're all together. They're not separate. If we look at the real ordering of territory, we are all find one another there. Well, this will generate, as for example, near Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta, we have more than 14 uh, planning instruments, different ones. So what happens? There is shock and clashing in territories. So we need to have development and generating opportunities for communities in local spaces. They need to go hand in hand to control illegality there in territories. Well, I think that we're about to close. We have some questions, pending questions, but because of time, we cannot go ahead with them. So I would like to say that these solutions for peace building in Colombia are important elements to be kept in mind. I would like to thank each one of you for your presentations, proposals, initiatives to build getting long-lasting and stable peace in our country. Carolina, Oscar, Daisy, Alberto, thank you so much for your participation in this event. We hope that this continues contributing, and we really thank you for your participation in this important panel. Thank you very much, everybody.